Hello and welcome to week 3 of Nurture Nature, our collage project inspired by local nature, looking at the work of Mark Hurld and linking into 5 ways to well-being. Today we're going to have a look at printmaking and stenciling. So I'm going to do a little bit of a demo. Hopefully a lot of you will be here face to face for this workshop. But if you're doing it at home, hope this will help. So the things you'll need are some scissors. You'll definitely need scissors, some corrugated cardboard. This is cut from an old shoebox. Some funky foam. If you don't have funky foam, you can use more cardboard, but if you've got the kit, you'll have funky foam. Put those up there for now. Some thin cardboard. This is for stencils. We're going to make some stencils as well. I'll just put that there. Your acrylic paints. So if you've got a kit, you'll have little tubes of paints. And think about the colours, because you've got 4 colours there. You won't have all the colours you need. And I'm going to use plants as my inspiration today. I haven't got any green there, but it doesn't matter. We can use different colours and we can do different things with it. So you'll need your little tubes of acrylic paints. Any acrylic paint will work. Let's just put those up there. Pencil, maybe a rubber and a pencil sharpener as well. A couple of cocktail sticks, you might want those. Some of these sponges out of your kit, or just washing up sponges. We've got paper plates as palettes, but you could just use any old piece of cardboard. PVA glue. We've got ours in this little tub. Masking tape, I think I said scissors, and some paper to print on. The first thing we're going to do is make a stamp. So you need a piece of cardboard and a piece of funky foam and your scissors. And we're going to cut a shape out of the foam, stick it on the cardboard and make a stamp. Here's some that I've made before based on plants. These are on the worksheet. So we're going to make one of these. So it could be as simple as cutting out a leaf shape. You can draw onto the funky foam first if you want to with a pencil. I'm just going to cut a leaf out. I'm going to trim that off a bit. And just to make it a bit more interesting, I'm going to split the leaf up the middle like that before I stick it down. And I'm also going to cut it twice like that. And keeping the bits on the cardboard. I hope you can see my hand's all right. And I'm going to cut it on this side twice like that. And this will hopefully then match up and it'll make a leaf. Whoops, got to get the bits in the right order. So I've sort of cut the veins out. So I've cut a really simple leaf shape and then I've cut it into pieces. I think that's made it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to glue that onto the cardboard. I'm going to use the PVA glue. I'm just going to spread it quite thinly. If you spread it very thickly, it will take ages to dry and you can't stamp it till it's dry. So just a thin layer of glue and stick it on the cardboard. So I'm going to do another thin layer on that one. I'm just going to keep sticking these bits down. I'm going to leave a little gap where I've cut it in pieces. I'm leaving a little gap because that will make it print in a nice way. We'll see the veins on the leaf. There's other ways of doing it as well, but this is quite nice. Got that the wrong way. That bit keeps jumping about. Where does it go? That way. So just make sure I've got the glue on the right side. There we go. Last bit. And then I've made a little leaf stamp. So while that's drying, put that right? No. Whoops. There. So I've left those little gaps and you'll see when we print it, that'll be quite nice and make it look like the veins on the leaf. I'm going to leave that to dry. I'll show you a couple of other things you could do. So this little flower, I've made up cutting out lots of little pieces. So you can draw your shape onto the foam. But if you were doing this flower, rather than draw the whole flower out, it's much easier if you draw just a row of petals like this, and it uses up less foam. It's easier to cut. You can then just keep cutting. This is how I do it. Keep cutting around one side of all the petals like that. Don't drop them on the floor, keep them in a safe place. And then you can pick them back up and trim around the other side. So it's a bit fiddly, but if you want to make a flower like that, you could of course make a much bigger one, wouldn't be so fiddly. Cut all the petals out, and then you just rearrange them onto your piece of cardboard into the shape of the flower. And that's going to use a lot less foam and be much easier to cut out than if you drew the whole flower. Then just cut a strip, just a little thin strip to make a stalk. Obviously I've only done a bit of the flower, and that's not even in your view. And then a couple of leaves. So you could build up a plant like that. Let's put that one to the side. You could also, I've cut a leaf here like a dandelion leaf, and I've used the cocktail stick to sort of gouge out or etch out the vein of the leaf. You can't really probably see it on the camera, but you will see it when it prints. So let me show you where I've printed that stamp there, and you can see where I've scratched out the veins with the cocktail stick. As I've printed it more often, they've sort of filled up with paint, and instead of being white on there, they've become darker, but you can just scratch them out again. When you print it, it comes out in reverse. You'll see that that long bit there is on the opposite side. The other one that's on here is this sort of dandelion flower, and this one I've used the cocktail stick to make the dimples in the middle there, and this big outside bit where I've cut the circle out in the middle to give a contrast. If you wanted to do something like that, let's just put that back up there. You can draw it first, obviously, but I'm just going to do it here. So if I wanted to do a flower shape, I know the other one was a dandelion, but that takes a long time to cut. So I just want to do a random flower shape. And then I want to cut the centre out to put something else in. You can just cut through it there. Cut your centre bit out. Like that. I'm going to put that to the side. Get a piece of card. Then when you glue it onto your cardboard, when you glue it down, that will just go together and you won't know there's a cut there, so you don't have to do any tricky cutting. And then I could use this centre bit. I'm going to cut a bit off all the way around so it leaves a gap, and then I could just cut another little flower to go inside. So there's no tricky cutting, and that would make quite a nice flower stamp. You could put a leaf or a stalk down there. So that's making a funky foam stamp. I'm going to get all these little bits and pieces out of the way over here. It's a bit static. And go back to the one that I just made. Now that glue should be dry enough now, but don't try and print it till it's dry. It's also best to get as much of the cardboard from around the edge off as possible. It will give you a cleaner stamp, otherwise you'll end up printing all the corners of the cardboard. So I'm going to trim that down like that. So I've got a bit of cardboard left around the edge, but most of it's gone. And it's also a good idea to put a little handle on the back like I have here. And you can do that with a bit of masking tape. There it is. Or sellotape. You can use sellotape. You could just stick a piece of cardboard on. I've got the masking tape, and I'm just going to fold it in half like that, and then stick it on the stencil like that, and just cut that little bit off. It's a bit big. Stick it down like that. So you could do that with ordinary sellotape, or you could glue a piece of cardboard on like that. That gives us a handle. So that's ready to print. and I've squeezed out some paint into a palette. Like I said, I've made a leaf. I haven't got green, but I can print it in a different colour. To print it, you need the little sponge. You hold the scratchy green bit and you dip the soft bit into the paint. So I'm going to do this leaf. I'm just going to use some black and some white paint and do a sort of grey colour leaf. I've dipped the sponge into the paint, and now I'm dabbing that around on the palette. I've got quite a nice grey colour there. I might put just a little bit of red in that. It's quite a nice colour. So I'm sponging that around on there to spread the paint out, and then I'm going to dab it onto here. Don't smooth it across, dab it on. You need to work quite quickly because the paint dries very quickly and you want to cover that foam. So I've covered that. I'm now going to turn that upside down and print it onto there. When you press it down firmly, but with sort of flat fingers or flat hand. If you poke it, you'll get uneven print, and if you bash it, it might slip. So I've pushed that down, and when I lift it up, I should have a nice print. So there's a nice leaf print. Now I'm going to add a bit more white to that, a little bit more red, and dab the paint on, dab it around the plate, dab it onto your leaf or your whatever your stencil is, stamp is, and I'm going to print another one here like that. Press it down. If you drop it in the wrong place, just print there anyway, because if you pick it up, it's going to have already made a mark. So I'm just printing that down, lifting it up, and you can see it doesn't matter that it's not a green leaf, it's making a nice print on there. So you can have a play about with that. You've got plenty of foam, plenty of card. Make a stamp, make a couple of stamps. You can also print with things around the house. Now, if you did the Hokusai coasters project where we did printing like the Great Wave, you'll have used things from around the house. So you could use a bottle top. We could print a circle using a bottle top like this. I'm going to press that down. You could also print, let's get a bit more red on there, the edge by stamping, sponging around the edge. Let's overlap that. I think I've got some on my thumb and printed my thumb. So you could play around with things like that. You could use cotton reels. You could print with those. They've got nice patterns on there. You could use the bottom of the bottle. We could actually, let's have a bit of that blue now. Always use that same, dab the sponge into the paint, dab it on the plate, and then dab it onto whatever you want to print. We'll only get just the edge of this because most of it's sort of curving inwards. We won't get that lovely flower that you can see there, but we should get a nice edge print. I'm going to press that down, wobble it about a bit. Yeah, see, that's cool. And then we could put the other bottle lid in the centre. Play about with things you find. You can use corrugated cardboard, cotton buds. You've got some cotton buds in your kit. You could use those, you know, to put centres or make little flowers up. Cotton buds, corrugated card, that needs the paint sponging on. If you've got any doilies or textured wallpaper, that would be nice. You can also use natural materials. So I've got a leaf here from the garden. It's not the best time for collecting leaves. I'm going to do this blue, bit black in there, I think. Nice and dark, sponging, dabbing, and then dab your paint onto the back of the leaf. It's got more, the veins stick out better. It's not the best leaf for this. You get really good leaves at different times of year. So in the autumn, you'd get better leaves for printing. But I'm just dabbing the paint onto the back there, and then I'm going to print this just in the same way that I did the stamp. Press it down. Smooth it out. Lift it up. Wow! See? Can you see that? Hope you can. You can get a great, I didn't think that was going to work as well as that. So lovely, lovely stamps from natural materials. So that's the leaf. You can also do a negative space type of printing, which we're coming on to with the stencils. I'm going to move that out of the way, come on to my next sheet of paper. And I've got a fern here. It's very young and quite floppy, but I've just got it out of the garden. And I could use the sponge, I could put that on my paper. I'm going to get some lighter colour on here, a bit of that nice blue. And it's not lying down very flat. I picked it a while ago and it's gone a bit droopy, but you'll get the idea. I could sponge on top of this very lightly. Need less paint for this. We're going to move on to stencils in a minute, and this is more like a stenciling technique, but I could sponge around this. Got a nice colour there. I'm struggling to hold it here. This is probably not going to be the best demonstration ever, but you'll get the idea. So I need to try and move my fingers without moving the leaf. If the fern was dried out a bit, maybe pressed between a couple of pages in a book for a couple of days, it would probably be easier to do, or if it was a bit of an older fern. But you can see by lifting that up, we've got this, it's called negative space, so we've painted around the edge, and the space where the plant was has become the image. Now I could then turn that over and print the fern. Probably need something to press it down with. But you can do things like this to make background papers for your collage. Well, not necessarily background papers, backgrounds, or papers that you can cut out for collage. So it's not a perfect print, but it's giving a really nice impression of the fern there. So that's the printing, and you know how to make a stamp, how to use things you find around the house and natural materials. Now I'm just going to show you how to make a stencil. So I'm going to move that out of the way. I could keep building that up with lighter and darker colours and make some really nice paper for collage. So I'm putting that back. Let's get another piece of paper. To make the stencil, you need some thin cardboard. You've got some in your kits, or any thin cardboard will do. And there's two ways you can make a stencil very easily: by folding your cardboard in half, like that. And whatever shape you want to do, so I'm sticking with plants, I'm going to do a leaf. You draw half the leaf, so I'm going to do a leaf like this, draw half the leaf on there. I should have probably left a bit more space there and there, because that might get a bit messy, but it'll be okay. It would be good if I'd have started a little bit further in, but there we go. Now I'm going to cut the leaf out with the card still folded. Cut this out. Cutting it on the fold, you have to make sure you do your drawing on the fold, not on the open bit. It wouldn't work then. So on the fold, cut the leaf shape out and make sure you've got some still folded at the top and the bottom. Open it out and you've got a leaf shape there. Now for stenciling, I'm going to get a different palette of paint. I'm still using the same colours because these were the colours in my kit. You need less paint than you do for the stamping. I'm going to dip that sponge into the red. I'll do just bright red, and I'm really dabbing that off, and I've got hardly any paint on there to start with. You could hold this stencil in place if you wanted to with a little bit of masking tape. Do you remember that trick that we've done before? Just stick the masking tape onto your clothes before you stick it onto your paper, and then it won't rip your paper when you tear it off. So I'm going to put just a little bit of masking tape to hold that still. And now I'm just going to dab very gently. It needs to be flat, there's something under there. Very gently. And with stenciling, you don't want the paint to be wet at all. We don't use the sponge wet for the stenciling or the stamping, but with the stenciling, it needs to be really, really dry. Now it looks like there's hardly any paint coming off, and actually there is hardly any paint coming off, but that's what we want. Now I'm going to put a little bit more paint on. If you have too much paint, it will squidge under the edges and you won't get a nice stencil. With the printing, if you have too much paint, your stamp will come out all smudgy and blurred. if you don't have enough paint, it will come out very, very pale like this. I'm just getting a tiny bit more paint on there, a bit too much there. There. And it's better to just keep building it up gradually like this than to use too much to start with. So I'm going to stop now. I think that's enough. I'll just get a little bit more in the middle there. So there's a stencil. I'm going to carefully remove that. You've got that lovely image. So it didn't look like much paint, but it's left a really nice print or stencil there. You can also use the bit you cut out to make the negative space like we looked at with the leaves. So I'm going to do this in a different colour. I'm going to add some blue into this so you can sort of see the difference. And I'll do it in a different place or overlap it a bit, doesn't matter. But this time, if you want to hold it in place with a bit of tape, you can do. I would fold it over like that. Just put it on that side and just stick it there. And this time, again with not very much paint and maybe overlapping, you dab around the edge. I've got nice purpley colours here. And you see these papers can be used in your collage. So although we're doing plants and we're doing them in blues and reds and leaves that aren't correct colours, it doesn't matter because things look different in different lights. But also you could use this as a collage paper. You could use it, you know, to make something completely different. You could use it to make a bird or something. So I'm going to lift that up. You've got that lovely negative space, and you can, you know, do another one on top in a slightly different, let's get a much paler colour, slightly different colour. You could sponge over. I've got a little bit too much paint on there, but I'm trying to be quick so you can get on and do some work instead of watching me all day. So I haven't stuck it down this time either, but I think you'll get the idea of that. Lift it up. You see, you could build up really nice layers by using your stencil or the piece you cut out to make negative space, and you can keep on doing that. You can also make a stencil if you wanted to make a stencil of something that wasn't symmetrical like the leaf. You can just draw your picture on here, so, or you can just cut freely. But say you wanted just a big random flower shape like that or something. So I've drawn that on the card. I'm going to cut that, leaving plenty of space around the edge, so when you stencil it, your paint doesn't go all over the edge. And you can just cut straight up to there. You don't have to worry about coming through the middle. Cut around your shape. Let's get this cut around there. Around there. And when you've finished cutting it out, see that bit you can use to do your negative space. This bit you can just repair it. So I'm going to use a bit of masking tape, but you can use sellotape. Just repair it there with a bit of tape. Fold it over. And there's your stencil. So just get a bit of paint and you can stencil. Too much paint. Too much paint. The stencils are much nicer when you build up gradually the layers like I did at the beginning. But this is quick. So there. See, I'm just playing now, aren't I? I should really stop now and let you put that over there. Let you go and get on with it. So that's printmaking and stenciling. And you can make a picture if you want to, but really it's just getting to know the technique. We're going to make our picture towards the end of the workshops. From week 5 onwards, we're going to start making a mixed media collage using all these different techniques. So I don't think I've forgotten anything. Oh yeah, I have. Stencils. You can also use your felt pens. I've just got my marker here, but you could use your coloured felt pens. Let's just, or a crayon or a pencil, anything, and you can stencil with your felt pens. So if you find the paint's a bit mucky, you can use your stencil with your pens. And one other thing that I should have said, if you're layering your stencils and your prints like I was doing them, you do need to leave the first layer to dry before you do the second one. The thing was with those stencils that the paint was so thin, it was drying as I did it. But if you want to overlap prints and stencils, there you go, little flower with pens. So you can also stencil with pens. And yeah, between layers, leave your paint to dry, but it dries very quickly. The printing will take a bit longer to dry than the stenciling. So look at that, that's cool, isn't it? Especially that leaf. So do get out and about, have a walk, see what you can find, maybe collect a couple of leaves and things to try printing with, and just have fun with printing. I think that's it. So I'll see you next week, where we're going to be using some of the techniques we've done already to put together a collaborative garland. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye.